And we are live for episode number 28 of Lowering the Barrier. Today, we have a guest, somebody who I've wanted on the show for quite a while now. I've followed, since the day I found her on Instagram, I was like, oh my God, she has incredible energy. She exudes positive energy. She's built a very big and explosive following. I mean, it's really blown up, and very dedicated following from the looks of it, a thriving business. And she does this by cutting through the noise and helping people what I perceive as stepping into their confidence. And whether that is fitness or business or just life in general, I think she's known for her no BS takes, her all foods fit mentality, and a knack for saying exactly what people need to hear. Chloé Bromage, welcome to the show.
Wow, that was such a nice intro. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do mean that. I think, when I look at, if anybody goes to her Instagram, you're going to see right away. You're not even going to have to click on any of the videos. You're going to see high energy, boom, right out the gate. I loved the full-blown pink outfit that you wore around New York City the other day. I was like, you just have confidence. You don't give a shit what other people think about you. No. You're living your life. You're doing what you want to do. You're spreading positivity, but you're also open about the obstacles that you've had to overcome to get to that position. It wasn't something that was just like, oh, I'm this confident person, it was something. And so I love that you have fully opened the doors and windows to the house that is Chloé. And I think that's so cool. And I really respect that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about your business, how you've grown that, your social media, and your confidence. So the first thing, though, that I need to get out of the way, everybody, you're going to hear Chloé has an Australian accent. She was, as far as I know, born and raised in Australia. Mm-hmm. Recently, though, she's come over to the States. She's moved to New York City. Okay, tell me about that move. What inspired it? And how has it changed your perspective on maybe life or business, or is it not that serious?
No, it is that serious, but equally, I'm a big believer in life's not really that serious. So sure. I love the States. I love the US. I always have. This is my third or fourth time here. And yeah, it was something that I wanted to do. I feel very, very accepted here. What you said about me before is like, I give zero fucks about many things. And I think what I love about American people and the American people I've met, they're just like, this is who I am. This is what I have to offer. You take it or you leave it. Australians aren't necessarily like that. And I feel like I got to a point where I have amazing friends, I have an amazing brand, an amazing business, but I just wanted more. And so towards actually the middle of last year, I ended my long-term relationship. And that was kind of the catalyst to go, well, if I'm going to do it, this is my time. So I did try and move in 2020 and then the pandemic. So life had other plans, but now I'm back.
And so how long have you been here? 2 months, roughly 3 months?
Yeah.
2 months. Something like that. So tell me about the best experience you've had so far and maybe the craziest thing you've seen or the worst experience.
You know what? The best experience I've had, I think, is just doing the mundane life things. I think we can talk about all the touristy things and, you dive in and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this, but I just love immersing myself in the culture. So it really just has been random conversations that I've had with random people every day. That's probably been my actual favorite part. And then I suppose like the craziest thing was like, I did have a homeless man sit on top of me on the subway, which was a little bit terrifying because there was many men on the subway car and nobody jumped up to help me.
Yeah.
So that was like a little bit terrifying, but other than that, it's been fine.
Oh yeah. That would be alarming for me too. Cause like, you don't know, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. This guy's probably just, dealing with something or something along those lines, but you're also like, is this guy going to hurt me?
Yeah. And that was my thing. I was like, I'm trying to have the most generous interpretation of you, but equally, please don't hurt me.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. Well, welcome to the USA. We're glad you're here. Is this where you want to stay long-term? Like, do you want to live in the States for life now? Is this a short-term thing? What is it in your mind so far?
I am somebody that makes very spontaneous decisions. You will learn that as this conversation goes along. I think where I'm at in my life right now, if I could stay here forever tomorrow, I think that I would. That is obviously not possible. That's not how visas work. However, when I eventually get married and have kids, I think I probably would still like to raise a family in Australia. I had a very, very great upbringing. I feel very, very blessed for that. So I feel like for the next 5 to 10 years, I would love to be here and then see where life takes me.
And then maybe settle down
Yeah.
with somebody, and
Somebody.
maybe, Prince Charming wherever they're at,
Wherever
and
he is.
yeah, and then you're heading back to Australia to raise
Yeah.
the family. I
Yeah.
love that plan. So okay, when I was prepping for this podcast, I did some digging, and I listened to an interview that you were on where you talked about it was some business guy. I'm so sorry for forgetting his name, but anyway, some business guy, and you had talked about 18. You had just finished school. Most people, when they turn 18, they're kind of figuring out what's next, college, work, whatever. I think you guys call it university, but
Mhm.
whatever it is. Instead of following the air quote usual path, you packed up and took a solo trip to Europe. What did that experience mean to you, and how did it shape who you are today?
It's a great question. I also love that you've done your research. I'm like, wow, thank you. It was honestly one of the biggest catalysts for who I am today, 110%. When people hear that I've traveled a lot on my own, they're like, how? I'm like, because I did it so young. And so for me, I've always, as you can tell, had a big personality, been very adventurous. And my plan was actually to do the trip and then go to university. But then I did the trip. I got accepted to university. I'm like, oh, that's the right path. Did it and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so for me, I think the biggest thing was when you stay in your hometown with your family, you very much have and become this version of yourself that other people want you to be without even realizing, right? Your parents have raised you. Your siblings are there if you have any. Your friends you've had probably for a very long time. And so I really witnessed the minute that I was gone, this version of myself where I felt like I could quote unquote be whoever I wanted to be, if that makes sense. And I think because when you don't know anyone, you're just like, I'm aware what I want, say what I want, and not from any kind of false pretense, but just like, this is my opportunity to step into this new version of who I am. And so once I did that, I got very, very addicted to that feeling. And I feel like I've almost chased that feeling ever since.
So what I'm hearing is something along the lines of you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you developed confidence from putting yourself outside that box, and that somewhat imaginary box, but also very real box is the box that where you live, who you surround yourself with, the environment that you're comfortable in, and you gain confidence. You specifically, but other people could gain confidence from pushing themselves outside of that box. And then another benefit of moving outside of that box is you get to it's almost like you're transferring schools. You're the new kid at school where nobody knows you. You can rebrand yourself. You can start wearing totally different outfits, and nobody's going to like kind of think twice. If you were maybe not a hat person prior, all of a sudden now you're a hat person, for example. Or if you didn't wear bright colors, you wore monotone. Now you can start wearing bright colors. And that moving outside of that box, the ability to almost rebrand yourself allows you to become closer to who you actually are and find a more confident and real way to represent yourself. Would you say that's kind of along the lines of what?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because I think we don't give ourselves enough time and space to actually just work it out. One of the things that I love about life is like you can become whoever you want to become. And I think that there's a lot of shame and judgment around wanting to change your mind, wanting to do things differently. And I'm so big on, find out. Go and find out. Even if it's wrong or you fail, like you're still going to find out.
I love this perspective that you have. And I think, it's like, I think if somebody were 50, 60 years old, they had done years of world travel, it'd be like, well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But to see it from somebody, that is, you're not 50 or 60 years old, right? You're sub 30. I think you're 24, 20, 25. Yeah. So, you're 25 years old and you've had all this life experience, and it's because you've pushed yourself to do these, things that people may either never do, or it takes them a very long time to do. So speaking of, putting yourself into different decision or different circumstances and kind of pushing that envelope and finding out what you want to do with your life. Every single coach in the industry has a different entry point into fitness, into nutrition. Some people start as athletes. Other people, work through their own transformation. It made such an impact on them that they want to help other people kind of go through a similar path. But you've clearly found a way to make this career yours, your journey, and very, unique to what you stand for. So what originally got you into this space? Take us through that story.
It's a really random story, to be honest, and I have my therapist to thank for it, actually. So my entry point into becoming a personal trainer was just genuinely like I'll just do it until I work out what I actually want to do with my life kind of job, because I dropped out of university. I was like, what do I like doing? I like going to the gym. Okay, I'll just do that. And so I did it, and I definitely had my own background of a lot of eating. I never like to categorize it as eating disorder, but a lot of disordered habits, a lot of my own body image stuff, like a lot of people have experienced. And it definitely did take up a lot of space in my life. And so when I was 18, I took myself to therapy, and I'm telling my therapist that I'm sad and I feel depressed and I'm anxious and all these things. And she goes, well, what do you like doing? And I was like, oh, I like working out and I like making like healthy recipes. And she was like, okay, we'll just start talking about that then. And so I like started a social media page literally because my therapist told me to. And it was just me being like, this is what I eat for breakfast. You know, this is my workout today. And then it kind of became this thing where I really love words. I can talk for days, but I really love sharing my own experiences. And it almost became like my live journal. And from there, people really saw themselves in my words and in my posts. And it all just unfolded by accident. And I'm very, very grateful that it did, because I don't know where I would be in my life if I hadn't started that, which is really cool.
Well, shout out to your therapist.
Yeah. Queen.
They did a great job. So now that, we know a little bit about your story, what got you into this space, I want to talk about your business structure, because this is something that, from a personal perspective, I always love hearing about how people created the business, how they grew it, how they're working on scaling it. So can you break down your business structure and then how you work with people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it originally started like I think a lot of coaches do, where it's just the one-on-one thing. So I did the one-on-one online with clients, but as a lot of people do, I at 2 points got into a bit of a bottleneck, because it was me servicing so many clients. And when you're trying to service all these people, then the quality of the service goes down. And then you only get to a point where you actually can't create any more revenue inside the business. And what I learned very quickly, I was like, I actually very much like running a business just as much as I like fitness. And so I honestly had to hit a few times where I made a lot of mistakes. I hired people, had to fire people, those sorts of things. But now I very much have a structure where we created an app at the end of 2023. And now everything is run through there. So I do have a team of people, of coaches who help me, but it's all run inside the app, which just makes it so much more accessible, because my audience is so much bigger. And the problem that I kept coming across was so many people wanted to work with me. I had a wait list, and then the wait list was too long, and then people were getting annoyed and all these sorts of things. So that was kind of my solution to that problem.
And so this new, this app that you have, is it something where it's now I actually already know this, but I'm just,
of course,
giving you a layup for the audience. Is it something where it's like a group membership? Is it one-on-one coaching? Tell me about the structure of that.
Yeah. So it is currently essentially a group subscription. And I love that personally. I love a community of like-minded people. And so I definitely wanted to create that. So there's a program, there is a meal plan, there's like a community function, and it has everything from like a period tracker inside it to a habit tracker. So it's a lot of group, and I kind of am just in there answering questions, giving motivation. But we have just now included a tier up from that now. So it's now working closer with me in a group capacity, but it's a smaller group, which is really exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Growing a business, not easy.
No.
It is. I very frequently make the analogy of both fitness and business. Like, there are very few shortcuts, and basically I want to say none. Some shortcuts, maybe somebody has a leg up in education, somebody has a leg up in resources or things like that. So there are some semi shortcuts, right? But growing a business is very hard. Getting in shape is very hard. So let's talk about growing the business side of things, especially now when seemingly everybody's trying to create, an online presence. Like it makes sense for people to enter the online atmosphere to grow a business. It'd be dumb to not play into the marketing side of that thing. So what were the biggest things that helped you take your idea, that you and your therapist kind of collaborated on a little bit? What were the biggest things that helped you take your coaching business from the idea to something real? What were those first steps like?
Yeah, the biggest thing, and I feel like everybody says this, but there's so much truth in it. I actually hired a mentor at the time. And it was funny because prior to my coaching coaching business, I actually worked for F45. And
Right.
that was what I thought. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I spoke to him about like, how do I scale this F45? How can I buy one in the future and make this my thing? And in the end, I actually then went, oh, I can do this myself, and applied a lot of those teachings. So I think never being afraid to ask for help is number one. And I'm quite stubborn in that. I feel like that's shot myself in the foot a lot of times with that, because I made so many mistakes when if I had just put my hand up and asked, it would have been so much easier. So I'd say that one. Another thing I think is like never steer away from your own, one, authenticity, but two, your own vision. I think it's very, very easy to get caught up in an industry in a lot of noise. What are other people doing? What are other people saying? But I think the biggest thing that's helped me even scale the business and everything a lot along this period of time has actually just been by me going, no, what's my long-term vision? Who do I actually want to help? And then the other thing I would say is making sure that you're having your client, your customer, they're always first in mind. I'm trying to help them. I'm not trying to impress other people. Like, I feel like money becomes a byproduct of you actually wanting to help people as well, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yesterday I recorded another podcast with somebody who built up a massive nutrition company and then sold it for 8 figures, and so he's doing very, very well. And that was exactly the thing that him and I had talked about, was a person-centric approach where you are trying to help the individual, the people, the clients first, and then money's the byproduct. So I think that's the perfect, especially in a service-based industry, like
Yes.
really any industry, but especially service-based industry. We don't need to worry necessarily about being flashy. We don't necessarily need to worry about, just showing off and all that. We need to worry about getting the best possible results, making the happiest clients, and then the reward will come because of that.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. When you hired that mentor, do you remember some of like the lessons or key takeaways that he kind of, put upon you?
I would say one of the biggest things is, I know this is going to sound so basic, but from an organization perspective, he was so big on spreadsheets, on profit, on loss, on all these sorts of things. And like, I don't know if this is a female thing or just, it's just me in general. I don't care about that. I'm like, no, just let me do the things that I love. But he was really big on making sure I was across everything. And I feel so grateful for that, because I think I probably would have got myself into a lot more trouble if I hadn't done that. That was massive. I think he was, if I'm honest, his biggest role in my life was just being someone that could always push my edge, where I was like, oh, maybe I could do this. He's like, no, what if you just did it? What if there wasn't a maybe? And I think we always need someone in our corner. I really, really feel like that was his main thing for me. And don't get me wrong, I learned a lot about, email marketing and all these sorts of things that are, yes, important, but similarly to what you said when it comes to the service-based thing, it's really about how you show up inside the business. And I feel like he really helped me with that.
Would you say, him pushing, reducing your self-limiting beliefs, and just obliterating those barriers that you and all of us kind of put on ourselves, would you say that was the biggest thing that he helped you with? And then, and how has that impacted your confidence in the way that you show up? Because again, I need to highlight for everybody, if you don't follow Chloé and you go look at her Instagram page, you're gonna be like, oh shit, oh my God, she is very confident. And so it's like, is that something that you feel like was a massive obstacle for you to kind of break free from?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think people look at me and yes, I am very, very confident, but often what people then assume is that you don't have limiting beliefs. So you don't have fear. And what I love to say to people is it's like, no, I have it all. I just do it anyway. And so I think for him, I didn't come from any form of background where people ran businesses. I grew up with, we didn't have a lot of money, anything like that. So for me, that was actually the most important thing for him to do, which I think sounds so basic, but upon reflection, I am so glad for every cent that I ever spent there, because it really did shape the business owner and then the person that I am today.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think just having somebody in your corner like that is absolutely invaluable. Totally agree. You work with a lot of coaches, whether it's peers or whether it's people that you have hired to work, for your business. I'm sure you've probably seen it all, people who take off like rockets and people who maybe stall out a little bit. So what would you say are some of the biggest differences between the coaches who thrive and those who struggle?
I would say, and this could be applied to fitness, right, too, it's a consistency thing. I don't think that the person that wins or the person that's most successful is necessarily even the most qualified, the most educated. anything like that. I just think that they're the person that, you know, failed 10 times and then got up 11. I really, really do believe that. And I think a lot of people, there's an image of a guy like hacking for diamonds. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I love that one.
And then right before he gets there, he gives up. And I feel like that's why so many things, quote unquote, fail. Like and this might be a controversial opinion, but I am such a big believer that like you can make anything work if you try hard enough and if you're willing to outwork other people. And so I would say I have a lot of friends in business. Again, I've had a lot of coaches, I've had a lot of clients, and I would say that's probably actually the biggest thing. It's every time something goes wrong, who do you decide to be? Because as you know, being a business owner is hard because it's always your fault.
Yeah.
Someone's always got everything, no matter what it is that's wrong, it's your fault. That's a lot of responsibility to bear. And so it's a lot easier just to throw in the towel and go, I don't want to do this. So something that I often say is like, if you can strengthen your resilience muscle, which is exactly the same as the gym, when the weight goes up, when you're in a lot of red area because you've lost a lot of money, when you spend a lot of money, when all these things start going, we've all been there, when things start to go wrong, it's like, who do you decide to be in that moment? If you can work on who you decide to be then, I think you can succeed every single time.
I totally agree. Consistency is, I guess, if there was one shortcut, it would be, and it's like, it's not, it's the long cut, right?
Yeah,
but like the long cut becomes the shortcut, because if you try 50 different shortcuts, whether we're talking about fitness, nutrition, or we're talking about business, you can try 50 different shortcuts. That's going to end up being the longest way. The longer way to do things, the air quote longer way to do things, is to stick to principles, stick to basics, and be consistent with it. And it's like, man, this might sound so basic and obvious to people listening, but it is also the truth that sometimes people need to hear. It's like, dude, shut up about the detoxes and the cleanses and like all that. Like, move your body, lift the weights, you know, help people. If we're talking about business, help people, show up in the way that you can, that is authentic to you. Don't try to fit, you know, a round peg in a square hole.
And I think, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
And I was going to say, I think that that's why, though, as humans, we have this tendency to overcomplicate anything. And it's like, it's very, very simple. It's just that it's sometimes challenging. It's not easy. And I think that's where people go wrong. It's like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. With business, you don't want to do the tedious stuff. You've got to do it. With fitness, you don't want to do the tedious stuff. Even in your relationship, anything like that, it's always the simple stuff that, exactly as you said, you can skip it at the start, but in the end, it's going to be the bane of your existence.
I also love that you highlighted, I meant to touch on this a minute ago, but it almost slipped my mind for a second. I recently read a book by Adam Grant called Hidden Potential. And one of the things that he highlighted was, I might butcher this, but one of the things he highlighted was how important it is to not find the person who's maybe the most qualified. Like you mentioned, maybe not the person who is had the greatest starting point, but it is the person who's made the most change. And so he's there was this story that he told in the book that it was a person who came from a disadvantaged household, son of immigrants, poor upbringing, and he really wanted to work at NASA. And NASA kept looking at his resume and they were like, nope, sorry, no. But what he had to do to get from his starting point to even apply to NASA was so much greater than so many of the other applicants. Anyway, down the road, he did end up getting hired at NASA because NASA changed their hiring policies and tried to find the people who were more disadvantaged and almost gave them an extra, like a little bit weighted average, because that is more telling. How far you've come is more telling than what your starting point is. Somebody who starts at, let's say, 100,000 and makes their revenue to 110,000. Great, amazing. But somebody who starts from dirt poor zero and he brings up to 110,000, I mean, it's easy to see when you think about it like that, who has made. And so in your business, being able to highlight the people who have, made the biggest, transitions and changes, is, I think that's a kudos to you for being able to acknowledge that and be able to, see the, I guess, without being too like on the nose, the hidden potential inside of people. Okay, we're going to pivot for a second and we're going to talk about how you show up on social media, because I think this is a superpower that you have, literally. One of the biggest things that sets you apart is your ability to not just show up as yourself, but to make people feel like they belong in the space. I think you have an uncanny ability with that. For a lot of coaches, especially new coaches, sorry if you hear my dog, a lot of new coaches, self-doubt is the biggest roadblock, like we've said. What advice do you have for somebody who struggles with confidence and showing up specifically online?
Embrace the cringe. People are, that's like my one thing. People are so fearful of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, being judged. And I'm like, that's the part of social media. You have to understand that it's not. We have this weird ability to think that it's real life whilst logically knowing it's not real life. Well, it's very, very odd. And so for me, I'm like, this is cringe. That's okay. Post. And I think the biggest thing that I can say is it's like, get out of your head and go, okay, if no one was ever going to judge me, if I knew that this would do really well, if it was going to land in the minds, in the eyes of my ideal client, yada, 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 what would I do? I would probably just post it. But more people show up on social media and fear judgment from their parents, their siblings, their cousins, and their ex than they do anything else. It's like, especially when you're running a business, you're not posting for anybody else. You're posting for those people. And so again, similar to what we said before about business, like almost having that client in mind, it's like, what is the purpose of you showing up on social media? And then how can you approach it? And yeah, just don't overthink it. People overthink everything.
It's one of my friends asked me, I mean, it was just a few weeks ago. He said that he went to this conference. He's in the tech world, and he went to this conference and met a bunch of people that were really high up in the tech world. And he asked them, what advice would you give me for, trying to further my career? He's already in a pretty good spot, but, he has ambitions to go even further. And he said, the higher up tech guy said, I hate to say it, post online. Post on social media, like put yourself out there, show off your work, show off the projects that you're working on. And he asked me about it because, I'm obviously one of his best friends, and I post a lot online. He said, is it ever cringe? I was like, dude, every time. Like basically every time. And I said, that feeling does go away. It gets better. But the first time you do it, you're going to be nervous. You're going to feel like, is anybody going to give a shit about this? But the reality is, more people care about it than you'd think. And at first, it might just be your mom, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your best friend. And I will say, one thing that hurts is when you have best friends that support you in front of you, but they're not supporting you online. And that can hurt. But if you can get past that, right? Because nobody's going to care more about your business than you. But if you can get past that, like, beginning cringe stage, that beginning fear, I think that is where you start to fly. And it's just like, you just can start rattling off ideas, like anything that's on your mind, you can start publishing it. Let's talk about imposter syndrome next, because this is just a great segue into this. I think every coach, no matter how experienced, to a degree, deals with degrees of imposter syndrome at some point. Have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome? And if so, how'd you push through it?
I love this question because it's made me now reflect and go, I don't remember the last time I felt that. And that's a good thing. But also I'm like, maybe I haven't challenged myself enough. So I'm like, maybe I need to do that. I would feel like the biggest thing that came up for me was when I used to network. I think similarly to the story that you talked about with the NASA situation from that book before, I always felt very out of place. But because I am somebody that I'm a hard worker, I'm enthusiastic, I always got thrown into these opportunities with people who earned way more money than me, had far better businesses than me, and all those sorts of things. And there was a very big part of me that used to panic. Anytime I was invited anywhere, I'd sit at a coffee table and I would just be like, I do not deserve to be here. And I hate to say this because, again, it's very simple. I had to go, okay, but what if I did deserve to be here? Because whether you like it or not, you're sitting at this table. So you're going to choose to get something out of it. And you can either take away what these people, they've invited you, they're trying to help you, they're whatever. You can either take something away from this, or you can sit here and fester in this thought of, I don't deserve to be here, and then get nothing out of it. And over time, like we said on social media, and like anything else, you just get better at showing up. And the fear or whatever it is, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and quieter over time. And it's not to say that there's things that don't come up where I'm like, oh, I feel really out of my league. But as we know, the more that you face it, whether you ride a bike, whether you swim, whether you diet, doesn't matter what you do, it gets easier over time. And I think the biggest thing for me, which again, some people like, some people don't, I'm such a big believer in diving in head first. I really think as humans, like that's the way that we learn, by screwing up. And so the more times that you can just be comfortable to fail and fall on your face, like embrace that. You screwed up, that's fine. Everyone has to start somewhere. And I think we often give other people in our life a lot of grace, and we give them so much forgiveness, but we never give ourselves the amount of grace and forgiveness. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know. So of course, at some point in your life, you're going to be an imposter, and that's okay.
Yeah, this ties back to every single step, not just of this conversation, but of your life, where you have consistently pushed the boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and you've gotten stronger, more resilient, more confident, specifically because of it. And so I think that is wonderful. A lot of people preach grind 24/7, especially when we're talking about business growth. But you seem to, I mean, from an outsider perspective, you seem to have figured out how to grow without burning out. How do you
Mm-hmm.
maintain those strong business boundaries and work ethic while still showing up authentically and managing burnout?
You know what? I think I had to really let go of this idea that it was going to look a certain way. I know that sounds vague, but I think I really had to just go, okay, if I could create something, a routine, a way of working that was going to be best for me, what would that look like? And so back to the conversation about consistency and discipline, I really have a list of things that I need to do and I need to achieve every single day. And it is like a non-negotiable for me to tick those off. And I think as humans, sometimes we get wrapped up in this idea, like I said, that it has to be done here, there, whatever. Like, to be honest with you, I worked from like 5:30 until like 9 today. The other night I worked from like 7 p.m. until like 11 p.m. Like, life looks different every day. And I think really embracing it as a form of a season rather than something that has to be 24/7, right? Because I have in the past, I worked far too much, but I'm a bit of an advocate for hustle culture. I just think people don't do all the other things that they should. Hustle culture becomes a problem when you're not eating properly and you're not sleeping properly and whatever, where it's like, and getting, actually asking yourself, what does productive look like? Because I can have a really unproductive 6 hours, but I can have a really productive 2 hours. And so I think for me, the biggest thing is, like I said, having the non-negotiables that I tick off work-wise, but equally having the non-negotiables that I tick off fitness, health, social-wise. My relationship with myself and spending time alone is very important to me. So that's scheduled in multiple times a week. My relationship to fitness and food is very, very important. It has been for years. So that's not hard for me to do. I think if I was hustling all the time and then eating takeout or not eating at all or doing all these things, that's when it becomes a problem. And so I think really, really giving yourself permission to create a form of hustle and working hard that actually is going to benefit you puts you so far ahead.
So, for the people who maybe haven't gotten that, for you, nutrition and fitness it's a pillar in your life, at this point. And it is for a lot of coaches for sure. But one thing that you mentioned specifically was you schedule in me time. You schedule in time to be by yourself or to do things that bring you joy. For the people who are still struggling on finding the balance of fitness and nutrition, what would you say those early days or weeks or months or even years look like to try to make it a bit more autonomous?
I would say the scheduling thing is perfect. I would say if you can really, really just even if you literally have to write in your journal, in your calendar, waking up at this time, doing things this time, whatever, because as we know, the more consistent we are, the quicker that we build a habit. And so you can actually then choose to be flexible later on. And so I'd say that's the biggest thing. And also looking at, okay, what is the most important to you? I think sometimes when people get lost in hustling or building a business or doing certain things, their values almost go out the window. And so it's like, okay, what is a really big value of mine? What does that look like to, take that into action every single day, every single week, every single month, whether that be your relationship with your husband or wife or your kids, or whether that be your fitness and health. And how can I actually make sure that the actions I'm taking every single day are ticking something like that off? I think the other part to that is just remembering that you will make a mistake and you will screw it up and you will go to bed late and you will skip a meal. And it's just not, it's like there's a trend on social media at the moment when people are like, I don't know if you've seen it, they spill a little bit of water and then they just like tip out the whole cup. And that's
Yeah.
a perfect example of that. It's like, if you screwed up one day, it doesn't matter. Just start again at the next day. And the same, I think, again, applies to all areas of your life.
Yeah, business, fitness, all of it.
Yeah.
The analogy, there's another one where it's like if you were driving and one of your tires blew out, you're not going to go slash the other three.
No.
It's like, but that is something that is, a lot of people, I'm sure you've dealt with this. I know you have with maybe yourself, but even more with clients that you've worked with, people who struggle with the all or nothing mentality. What would you say for the people who, are I spill a little bit of water, I might as well dump the whole cup out, in terms of, an analogy, but in terms of the fitness and nutrition and even the business side of things? What advice would you give to the people who are struggling with that all or nothing mentality?
Yeah. I am the queen of this because I used to be the queen of all or nothing. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What I would say, I'm just laughing thinking about the things that I used to do. Ridiculous. This is going to sound random, but you need to practice emotional regulation. What we
Hmm.
often do when we do this all or nothing thing is it's because we don't know how to regulate in the moment. So we panic and we go, oh, I screwed it up, or I ate, 2 rows of chocolate instead of 1 row. So now my whole diet's ruined. In that moment, and again, it sounds simple, doesn't mean it's easy. It's like, do I need to take a deep breath? Do I need to go and journal? Do I need to go step outside? I just need to do something for 5 minutes, walk around the block, and then come back and ask myself the same question. Then I do this with clients and I say this to them with binge eating. It's like, if we actually take a moment just to sit and then ask ourselves a question, you'll find you actually do know the answer. You do know what you need to do, but it's when our emotions cloud our judgment and all those sorts of things that we end up kind of taking an action that isn't in alignment with what we want. And so for you, if you've got a health or a fitness goal, the simple question that you can ask yourself is this action in alignment with this said goal? And 9 times out of 10, you're going to say no, but it's because you gave yourself a moment. So rather than trying to give you a 50-step process on how to do it, just go stand outside for 5 minutes, put your phone down for 5 minutes, take a deep breath, do whatever it is that you need to do, because that is always going to bring you back down.
So, to kind of summarize what you're saying here, I think is instead of being reactive, you want to be reflective,
Absolutely.
and it is trying to look at just giving yourself a second to breathe, think about the emotions that you're feeling, and not being so quick to make an action to try to fix an emotional state. Where did you learn these emotional regulation skills, and how would you recommend people develop them? Was this a therapy exercise? Was this a self-discovery kind of thing?
I would say it's probably a mix of both. I don't necessarily think it was something that my therapist sat down and told me to do, but it was probably a mix of her bringing self-awareness into my life whilst also something that I discovered. And I also worked out working with clients. And so the biggest thing that I think people need to remember in life is we need to slow down. And it sounds rich coming from me because I'm a go, go, go kind of human, but we are doing so much all the time. And I think we live in our head, and something that I've learned when it comes to any area of your life and being able to be self-aware and emotionally regulate is you need to be in your body. And so what does that look like? Eating without the TV, without your phone, trying to as best as possible. And I'm very well aware not everybody has the same 24 hours in a day, but it's looking at, okay, how can I apply that to my own life? If you live near nature, you need to go be outside in nature. Maybe you need to journal. There's so many different things, but something that I'm really, really passionate about is getting people to just be curious as to why they think something or why they do something. Doesn't even mean that you need an immediate fix. It's just if you can go forward in your life and go, why do I think that? Why do I say that? Why do I do that? Because when there's curiosity, there's less room for shame and guilt. And when there's shame and guilt, not a lot can be done because you end up just feeling really bad about yourself. But if you can put that down and go, oh yeah, why do I say that every single time? Oh, it's because of this. The minute that you're aware of who you are, it becomes so much easier. And I think you can read all the books in the entire world, but I'm so big on action. You never learn anything unless you can actually do it. So I would start there.
That is wonderful. I mean, it's almost like the tenets of mindfulness embodied. It's you're asking people to just be curious. I think that's a really interesting perspective to have, and I think it's very impactful and practical.
Yes.
It's not just because anybody can do that. Anybody can just set a 60-second timer. If you're feeling this emotional spike, just set a 60-second timer, 5-minute timer, go for a walk. Please do literally anything and just think about, why am I feeling this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. And I hope this is I know this will be very helpful to the listeners. Let's step outside business. Let's step outside coaching for a minute and talk about, if you weren't in fitness, if you weren't in business, what do you think you'd be doing?
This is a very hard question. Someone actually asked me this week. So I feel I'm I came prepared. But even then, I still don't know if it's my answer because when you love something so much that I can't fathom not doing it.
Yeah.
I would say I'm the eldest of 6 children. And I really do. I got to see the impact that you can have on kids from being a teenager. Yeah. And I love watching little kids just believe that they just think that they can conquer the world. And I love that feeling. And so I feel like I would want to do something. I don't even know what it would be in that realm. I love having an impact on kids. I love people building their confidence realistically. So maybe let's go down that path. It would be probably something in how can I impact people to be more confident in themselves, whether I was a teacher, whether I was anything of that realm.
Almost like a motivational speaker, where it's you can have a really big impact on kids in a way that you are helping build them up. I think the great thing about teachers is they can have a lifelong impact. The sad thing about teachers, and I think I'm not a teacher. I am a coach and I work with one-on-one clients, and I know that you have experiences too. It is both heartwarming and heartbreaking when clients leave. Heartwarming when you have those clients that's like, I've learned so much from you. I have loved every moment of this and I'm ready to do it on my own. You're like, yes,
Yeah.
amazing. Also, I'm crushed that I'm not going to talk to you anymore, you know, or we don't have that same contact. And so that's always one thing that I felt like a lot of empathy and sympathy toward teachers. It's like they spend, you know, an entire year getting to know this class of 20, 30, 40, 50, however many kids. And then it's goodbye. And I don't know if I'll ever hear from you again. And
Yeah.
so it's like, gosh, that would be a very hard profession for me personally to do.
Yeah, emotionally, I think so too. Absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that.
That'd be brutal. So, okay. You talked about consistency earlier, and you know, I think we really I think you nailed that in terms of how important it is. So let's talk about some of the behaviors that you are specifically consistent with, because success isn't just about these big one-time moves where it's like, oh wow, home run. It's about showing up to bat every single day, right? It's the daily habits that nobody sees but that you are consistent with, and maybe it's daily, maybe it's weekly, whatever it is. But what's one small daily or frequent habit that has made the biggest impact on your success?
Do you know what? I'm going to the gym. I would say.
Yeah.
I really feel like it sets the foundation for everything, because I go to the gym, my mental health's better, I'm in a better mood. When you go to the gym, you usually want to eat better and then you want to sleep better. And I feel like it is just like almost a domino effect. And I think I notice a very big difference in every area of my life when I'm not consistent with, and not even going to the gym, but just moving my body in some form of way. Because I think, as you know, it's like all these little habits interlock, but that one by far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, obviously, I'm extremely biased as somebody who works out
Yes.
like religiously. But no, I totally agree. It's one thing that, you know, we have direct control over,
Yes.
and it does make us mentally tougher. I frequently say that, like, I don't really care why somebody wants to step foot in the gym, because the outcomes are all going to be the same. Whether you are in it for the aesthetics, whether you are in it for your health, whether you saw your parents' health decline, or you just want to set a good example for your kids, whatever it is, all those reasons are perfectly valid because the outcomes are the same no matter what. You are going to get healthier. You will change your aesthetics. You will, you know, be the role model for your children, you know? So it's like the outcomes for this, but more than anything else, I mean, maybe not more than anything else, but equally as everything else, you are building mental strength and fortitude and resilience. And like you've said, you know, over the last 40 minutes, it's resilience is so important for not just the business growth, but the personal development, and
Yep.
the consistency and resilience from the gym is something that it's hard to replace that. You know, it's
Yes.
very hard to pull yourself, you know, take a person who can force themselves to go to the gym on the 30-degree days. I bet they're going to be able to do a lot of other hard shit too. I know it sounds silly to the people. I mean, anybody listening to this podcast, to be honest, is probably already a gym goer, realistically, like with my audience. But, maybe you have a significant other, a spouse, you know, somebody that you're thinking about going to the gym. I'd highly encourage it, not just from a mental health perspective, but also from a resilience perspective. Looking back on your journey, you know, you've grown a ton, right? Both personally and also professionally. If you could sit down with younger Chloé and give her one piece of advice, what would it be? And I did see your Instagram post where you talked about this probably about 5 to 7 days ago, and I absolutely loved it. And so I had to plug this question in here.
I love it. That I could go on forever about this. I think there's one word that comes to mind, so I'm just going to go with that, but it's leap. I think that so many people spend so much time in their life thinking and wishing and hoping and all those sorts of things, that one day I'm going to do this and one day I'm going to do that. And something that I say very often, which is a little bit morbid, but I'm very much driven by death. I'm very much driven by the fact that we are all going to die someday. And the sooner that you can, every time you feel that fear and that excitement, you just go, you know what, I'm just going to do it. That to me, every single time I've done something like that, my life has changed immensely for the better, even if there was hiccups, even if there were things that happened. So I would say, like, that's what I would just want her to know, is like, all the things that you're thinking, go and do them right now, run.
Yeah. Pull trigger. Might as well do it. You know, there's no reason to pause.
Yeah. No.
I love that. Okay. This was everything I prepped for. These were all the questions I had.
I
We
love
got
it.
through it really quickly. Before we wrap it up, is there anything that you feel like we missed in terms of lessons for the audience, mindset, anything like that?
There was something I thought about before. I don't know. I feel like I just feel called to say and share. It's like whatever it is that's on your mind, your heart, whatever it is that you're going through right now, please know that you can actually get through it. Because I think for so many people I've spoken to in the last 10 to 12 months, 2024 apparently was a really hard year for a lot of people. And I think that we often go into this new year either sometimes way too hard or with the fear of what happened last year. And this is just a reminder that no matter what it is, you've survived 100% of all of your hardest days and you will get through it. And the more that you continue to show up and put in those reps in your relationship, in your business, in the fitness world, whatever it may be, the stronger that you're going to get, but the more that your life is going to get better because your life is for you. It's not for anyone else. It's for you. And you actually deserve to, excuse my French, fuck around and find out with your potential and see what happens. Because I think, again, back off what I just said before, I know so many people and so many adults in my life that still makes me really sad that I'm like, you're never, and it's awful, but you're never going to live up to your full potential because you live with so much fear.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart.
The self-limiting beliefs have stopped them from going after their dreams and going after their passions. Yeah.
And the older you get, I feel like the harder it is. So it's like, don't wait another day, because it's like when you do have kids, when you are married, when you get older, it's so much harder to break free from that. So I would just say like, it's never too late, but start now.
Yeah, really. Yeah. And it's the same thing with fitness. It's, you're never going to have more energy. You're probably never going to have more time. And like maybe when you're retired, sure. But like then the energy's going down a little bit. And so it is never a bad time to start, to pull trigger, to make that decision, to make that leap, like you said. Chloé, this has been absolutely exceptional. It was everything that I had hoped it would be and expected it to be. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you and what products and services do you have if people want to work with you?
No, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation so much. You can just find me at Chloé Bromage on Instagram. That's kind of where I am. That's where my website lives, all the things. And feel free, especially if you're a woman, to come join the Health Hyped app. That's where everything lies. So you can check it all out there.
All the links for her social media profile and her app/website will be in the show notes. So you go take a look at those. And that is it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Take care.